And that's the key difference. And I know we've discussed this before, but there's a big difference between the casual crowd and the mainstream crowd. And then often they're confused for the same thing. Where people, if they think that you're gearing a game towards casual crowd, of course that's going to be oversimplified, but that's not what we're doing. We're just broadening the amount of people that would find this game interesting. If we wanted to make a casual game, we'd do SOCOM Tetris or something.
Yeah. We're not making an iPhone game.
Yeah.
It's not SOCOM iPhone. You're not going to tap on a screen and make your team run around. So, but again, I don't think that's necessarily what people's impressions are of the broader audience. I think there are concerns that we're going to make it easier or, more similar to some of these other shooters out there. But we're going to do that in our own way. So that, it's not fair to the team, if you will, to point to another game and say, oh, you're going to make it like this game because that's the game that everyone's buying now. That's not really the intention, and that's not necessarily the direction we're going.
And I can say this for sure. I know it doesn't mean anything to them now because they haven't played it yet, but we play multiplayer a lot here internally, and I can tell you that it definitely is unique. It does not feel like any other shooter out there. It does feel like you're playing a SOCOM game, and it's fun, and that's the most important aspect is we have a lot of fun. Also, I'd like to mention that Chris is one of our top 3 players in our clan, so congratulations to that.
Thank you.
Jay Zombie wants to know if it's possible to play the game without using the cover system, or will the cover system be our only option of hiding from enemy fire?
It's definitely possible to play the game without using the cover system. Many people actually do here.
I do. I don't use it.
Yeah. No. I mean, if you don't want to use the cover system, don't use it. So it's absolutely possible to play it without it. And I think it's useful under certain scenarios to use the cover system. And, I find myself using it and not using it as is applicable. If am looking to hunker down and really, use a piece of an object in the environment as cover, I'll use the cover system as kind of makes sense, right? If I want to stay on the move, as in multiplayer, obviously, a lot of times you do want to stay on the move. I'm not going to, use the cover. I'm going to use the more traditional, peek and shoot and other types of methods of just staying on the move and not, hunkering down on a piece of cover. So people absolutely don't use the cover or use it depending on the situation.
A question that we see appear on the forums a lot, which I think is a very fair question, especially given the answer that we can choose to play with it or without. If we can play through the game without playing or using any cover whatsoever, why have cover at all? What is the benefit of having a hard cover system versus a soft cover system if you don't even have to use it if you don't want to?
Well, there's a lot of benefits to it. Obviously, when you're in cover, you are more protected by that cover. And, that's the benefit of using the cover. You're able to more effectively use that position. The big disadvantage is that you normally focus in a very specific direction and you're not moving. And if you are hankering down in a piece of cover for too long and you're playing a multiplayer game where it's fairly easy to flank the player, well, you're going to get flanked and you're going to die. So you have to decide when it's appropriate to use that cover and how to use it.
Dr. McNew wants to know, how interactive are the maps? Are there things to breach or lights to shoot out? Anything along those lines?
Well, I think that we're mainly focusing on damage and different elements to the maps. So, there's a lot of interactivity with just objects that get shot, damage being taken to the environment, things of that nature. Destructible cover. So that's really where a lot of the focus has gone to, rather than breaching or lights to shoot out. There's various reasons why that is, that are probably hard to explain and people won't really, get it too much. But that's where we've decided to put our focus.
Stormalong wants to know if there's any news on whether the guns are real or licensed in SOCOM 4, or if they're fictional names.
We try to base our weapons on what the military designation is and what the military uses out there. And so, we don't have any licensed guns. You won't see the real name for it and who the manufacturer is. We don't have any licensed guns. We try to stay true and authentic to what the military uses in the game, but we're unable to use the licensed or the real name of the weapon and the weapon manufacturer, unfortunately.
Tiberius213, in rough paraphrase to things, so let's hope that Jeremy did this correctly, says, what features, if any, are still quote-unquote pending? In other words, what sort of things are still being decided on in terms of whether or not they will make it into the game before ship?
I would assume not many, considering we're 8 or 9 on the done scale.
Yeah, again, this is one of those things that there's not a lot of issues pending right now from our development side, but there's a huge amount of issues and content that the community and consumers at large don't know about. So again, it's there's not a lot pending at this time. We are getting closer to completion, but unfortunately, we haven't been in a position to share a lot of the stuff that's been building up and going into the game for the last 6 months.
Yeah, right now it's more about polish and tweaking numbers and fine-tuning stuff rather than saying, hey, I have an idea, let's put in spaceships and then add those, that we're kind of past that part, and now we're in, let's play with things and kind of, make it all shiny.
Yes, and we just recently reached that point. So that's one of the main reasons why the release of the title was pushed out, because we wanted to get in a certain number of features and functionality into the game to make sure we're delivering the best game possible. And we just recently reached the point where now we're focused more on polishing the game and the experience and making sure everything's working and functioning correctly as intended, rather than continuing to add a larger number of new features.
Blackout Basement wants to know if the controls have changed since E3.
Yes.
Would you say that they're more in the way that they've changed, the nature they've changed? Because obviously we're not going to go over button by button, but what would you say was the big focus of the change? What is the game more accessible to now than it wasn't versus E3?
I think we're always trying to refine the controls, make it not necessarily more accessible, but we want everything to work in the most refined manner possible. There's been a lot of refinement that have gone into the controls since E3 to just try to make the game play better, make it easier for the user to do certain actions in the game without having to do so many button presses or making some of the things overly complex.
Death Awaits wants to know if the trophies will be based on online performance, offline stuff, or a mixture of both.
Well, we're not talking about trophies at this point.
Yeah.
But I think it's fairly safe to say that it's going to be a mixture of both. SOCOM 4 is not an online-only game, so it's not going to be based purely on online. And, but it has a strong online component, so it's not going to be based purely on offline. So it's going to be a mixture of both.
I will say as a little aside, when MAG shipped, and it got better over time, but when MAG shipped, it had some pretty insane trophy requirements. SOCOM is not going to be that insane.
Yes.
So you don't need to play 1,000 hours to get everything. So,
though, if you do play 1,000 hours, kudos to you.
Yeah.
We did confirm one criteria to get a trophy many months ago, though, and when we said that there is one trophy associated with chickens, but that's all we'll say.
Yeah, and that went over really well, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. Pepsi Cola, the person, not the actual drink, wants to know if we'll get a weapons list and when.
Well, we hope soon. I know
the favorite word of
people
soon.
Don't like hearing soon, but yes, we hope soon we'll be able to start talking about the weapons in the game. And again, that's one of the other things we were able to do with the additional time in the title is actually add additional weapons to the game. So we were able to go through and better fill out the armory that we have in the game with some additional goodies there. So.
And the last one from this week comes from Tombstone for You. He wants to know what differences can we expect for Abandoned compared to the original version of the map?
Well, I can't go into too many specifics with that. I can say that it's going to be graphically updated. So it's going to look better than it did in SOCOM 1 and SOCOM 2. I think that's kind of a given at this point for map and game. And so, a lot of the focus is just going to be on cosmetic changes to the map to make it look better for the PS3. There might be some other minor differences, but nothing that majorly affects the play of the map compared to the original titles.
We were talking about this yesterday, and again, we won't go into details about it. But
with Kevin Schmidt, the guy who works on
it. Don't expect it to be not a carbon copy, but it's not also a complete remix of the map. It's very much in line with what it was before, even if it's not exactly the same. So it's definitely
close
there.
Is what we're getting at.
It's definitely pretty close. So
yeah, I think it's very close, and it's mostly visual changes. The gameplay is very similar to what it was in the past. Again, there might be some minor changes to it for gameplay reasons.
Now, as Seth alluded to earlier, he's a very busy guy right now, and since we are so close in our progress of the game, we actually don't have as much time as we normally do in terms of these podcasts, because Seth has to run and go to a bunch of meetings. So thank you for coming here. We appreciate it. It's a shorter podcast than usual, but before we go, we wanted to give you a couple of notes, Chris.
The first thing is that this is the second to last podcast of the year. The last one will come on December 17th. And what's kind of crazy about that is that show will be, at least in its current form, the last show for how Zipline is now. Starting next year, which I don't know the first day we'll have the show next year, sometime in January, obviously, we're going to kind of retool the show a little bit. And it's kind of we have a pretty good idea of where we're going to take it, but we're at least going to, we decided a week or two ago to sit down, kind of relook at the show and say, what is it that's good and what's bad about it and what can we fix and tighten up.
And more importantly, what do you guys want from it?
Exactly. So we're going to be making some changes to how it works. So hopefully it'll be more in line with what you guys would ultimately like to hear. And so expect changes to the show coming sometime in January.
And we also just wanted to thank everyone for being patient these last however many months that we've been in this blackout period. We do realize that you guys want SOCOM 4 information. You want it now. We're getting there. We're very, very close. We're going to be updating SOCOM.com in the near future, and that is the beginning of what we think is going to be a really big 2011, not only in terms of the amount of information you're going to get next year, but the fact that the game comes out next year and everyone will get to play it for themselves.
Yep.
And personally speaking, and I think that I speak for just about everybody here, we can't wait for you to actually finally play this thing.
Yeah. And with that, as always, you can contact us the ways that we always tell you. If you want to send us an email, you can send it to zipline@zipperint.com. And you can look for the official forum threads on the MAG and SOCOM forums. We'll put up the Q&A threads on the Monday before the next show. A reminder, the next one is the 17th. Where you can submit questions for that week's guest.
If you're a social networking sort of a person, you can find us on Twitter @Zipper, or you can find us in 2 different Facebook locations. You can do a search for Zipper Interactive or SOCOM, and we're the top of both of them, so look for us there.
And again, the next show will be December 17th, the last one for the year. And I guess that brings us to the end. Seth, thank you for coming on again.
No problem.
One other thing I want to mention about the December 17th show, that will be a show in which we also address the other thing that Seth was talking about earlier, our other attempt to address the player accounts and how new players can experience MAG in a new way. So that should be a good one for MAG fans.
Yep.
But until then, happy Hanukkah. It started this week.
Oh, yeah.
And see you next time.